How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi Ches, Daf 98 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends, let's go. Alright, we're starting Daf Tzadi Zayin Amud Beis, about 6-7 lines from the bottom. The first word on the line, Ba'a mine Rove me Rav Chizde, bum bum. So Rove asked a kasha from Rav Chizde, his father-in-law. Now I don't know if it was his father-in-law at the time, but alright, I'll call upon him. Hamalves Chavero Al Hamadbeya ho. So a fellow who so Shimon leads a bunch of gives a bunch of outlays a bunch of like wheat or whatever to Ruvain to go sell, and he's got to get paid back $1. Vosifu olive, but now they added $1. Imagine like a silver dollar, and now the silver dollars contain more silver content, i.e. they're worth more than $1 now. They're worth $2, whatever. Mau. So, Amrlo, so if Chizah says, no matbea, yotze b'osashua. So you give the more expensive coin. Okay? So Reuven goes to pay back Shimon. He has to pay back the current version of the coin, which is taka more expensive. Amrle v'afilu kinafyo. Rava says, even if the new coin is as big as a sieve, he says, yes, even if the new coin is as big as a sieve. Even if it's as big as a tartia. He says, yes, even if it's as big as a tartia. It sounds like a children's book. Not anymore. Now it gets into ribis. The children they lose their interest when it comes to ribis. So, Zaylin Pere. But the problem is that what does Rashi say? Exactly. Right. The thing is that it's too much money. You're like overpaying, right? Meaning relative to the new, more expensive amount, what Reuven received initially is not worth that much. So and therefore we have to be concerned about ribis, about interest, right? Meaning be'etzem, Reuven received $1 worth of like wheat, but now he's being asked to return, I don't know, $2 worth of, a $2 coin. So he's paying interest, in practice. Right? So Amar Rav Ashi Chazinan I Machmas Tiva Zil Mankinon Lei. Vi Machmas Tara Zil Lo Mankinon Lei. So we say, well, let's do an analysis. If we're saying, if this disparity is because of the increase in the coin, then now the coin is more expensive, and by having to return the more expensive coin, so he's overpaying, so yeah, we should lower the amount so that there won't be overpayment, there won't be any concerns of interest. But if it's the fruits, if the produce, if the wheat became cheaper because, there's a lot of rain and there's now a lot of produce, and therefore the price of wheat, right, there's a lot of wheat in the market, and therefore it's cheaper. So if that's the reason for the disparity, well then he still needs to pay that coin. But still, at the end of the day, the coin is a more expensive coin. There's more silver content in it. It's a more expensive coin. So, you're going to be overpaying. There's going to be a concern of ribis. No, so rather it's like the Maise. There was something with Rav Papa and Rav Huna of Yeshua, his sidekick, that they went to Agardmis, the Arab, and he was, I guess, a money changer guy, and the coins that were originally worth 10 are now worth 8 coins because the coins are more expensive now. And they figured out how to do the cheshbon to make sure that you're not overpaying. Omer Rabba says, Rabba, Azoyrek matbeya shel chaver leyam agadol ho. A fellow who throws his fellow's coin into the great sea, the Mediterranean, I believe. Potter. So the thrower is potter. My time, how come? Omar hamonoch kamoch ibois shakli. Because the thrower is going to say, look, it's right in front of you. It's right in the great sea. Go get it. But that's only if the sea is clear. If the sea is clear and you can see the coin, so then say, hey, go get it. But if the sea is murky, and it's not easy to find the coin, well then the thrower is in trouble. And it's only if he let's go weiter. Aval shakli biyode migzol gazle hashavaboy mebid. If the thrower actually grabbed the coin and threw it, then he would definitely be on the hook to make sure that it is returned. But if he hit the guy's hand, so then he could say, hey, it's in the clear waters, go get it. Mosiv Rave asked, Akasha, in mechalin al maos she'enon birshuso. You cannot be mechal meiser sheni on money that is not in your possession. Ketzad, what are we talking about? Oyu lo maos bekastor b'har melech. If you had money in Kastor and Har Melech, which are places that I think are not easily accessible, O shenofel kisoli amagodol, or his wallet fell into the great sea. Ein mechalin, so we cannot be mechalol maos meiser sheni on that money, and because it's considered inaccessible to him. So we see that money that's in the great sea is considered inaccessible. So therefore, if the guy knocks the money out of the other guy's hand and it goes flying into the Mediterranean Sea, it should be considered no longer in his possession. It should be a problem. Why are we saying, hey, just go get it? What do you mean? It's no longer in his possession. That you just made it no longer be in his possession. You should have to return it to him. Rabba says, Rabba shiny linen meiser. It's different when it comes to meiser sheni. We're more stringent. We have a more stringent definition of in your possession. Because we need it to be available in your hands. Because the Pasuk says that you have to take the money in your hand, and once it's in the Great Sea, it's no longer considered in your hand, and therefore you cannot be machal maos meiser sheni on it. But in terms of gezela, it would be still considered in the fellow's, in his possession, so that the thrower could say, "Hey, go get it from the clear waters." V'amar Rabba says, "Rabba ashof matbeah shel chaveroi," a fellow who knocks his friend's coin to smooth it out. So he didn't actually remove any of the silver content; he just kind of reshaped it, smoothed it out, knocked it out. So potter. So he's potter for knocking. My timer, how come? Dehalo avad v'lomidi. He didn't do anything. It still has the same silver value. That specifically, if he takes a knocker and a hammer and he knocks it, aval shaifa b'shofina. But if you use a plane and actually skimmed off silver content, chasre, well then he's making it deficient. And it'll be chai for that. Moshe Rave asks Akashi, al eino v'samo. The fellow hits a guy on his eye and plops it out. Al ozno v'chersho, or if he, I guess if he hits him on his eye and he gets blind. If he hits him on his ear and he becomes deaf. Evid yotze boyin lecheris, an Evid will go free for that. Kineged eino ve'eino roe, kineged ozno ve'eino shomea. But if it's next to his eyes and now he can't see, or next to his ears and now he can't hear, ein Evid yotze boyin lecheris, an Evid would not go out to freedom. So we see that even in a scenario where there's no physical change, right? For example, you make the guy deaf. There's no physical change over there, and yet we're saying that he goes free. So I would make the same argument that if you knock around the coin, and it's the same silver content, but it's different. Right? In practice, it's a shtickle different. You messed around with the shape and everything. So I would think that's a problem. Just like when you make somebody deaf, even though you didn't physically plop anything out. So Rabba l'taimi dama Rabba chersho la'aviv nerog. But no, the reason why Rabba would say that the Evid would go free for if you make him deaf is because Rabba is consistent with his reasoning, which is, well, if a child were to make his father deaf, he would be killed for that. How come? She'i efshir lachrisha below chabura de tafta de dama naflos lebeune. That Rabba says, look, when somebody goes deaf, it's not that nothing physical happens. Something physical happens. So, what does it say? It says there's some kind of a chabura that's made. The Tafta de dama naflus le beudne, that some blood dripped into his ears and made him deaf. So there actually is a physical component to becoming deaf, unlike knocking the coin where the silver content remains intact and unchanged. Where am I? V'amar Rabba, says Rabba, Hatzorim ozno ozen parosu shel chaveru, a fellow who what does tzorim mean? Can somebody tell me what tzorim means? 1 second. To nick, to knock, to nick. So v'amar Rabba, Hatzorim ozen paroso shachaver, somebody who nicks the ear of his friend's cow, potter. He's potter. My time outcome, para kaima, because it's still the same cow. You didn't decrease the value of the cow in any way. Okay, it's a value with a nick. So what? Oh gosh, sorry, Bob. It's a cow with a nicked ear. So what? Where am I? He didn't do anything. Look, not every single cow can be offered as a korban, right? Because a cow that has a tzorim ozno is I believe a mum. But okay, fine. So it has a nicked ear, but I mean, it doesn't affect its ability to plow or anything like that, or to be eaten or whatever it is. So therefore, he's potter. Masiv Ravit ha'osem melacha b'meichatos u'paras chatos potter. That somebody who does melacha with the meichatos, right, the water that has the ashes of the paraduma mixed into the paras chatos, or I believe the paraduma itself, and like you use it for as a weight or something. Well, maybe the meichatos use it as a weight. The paras chatos, maybe you actually do work with it. Potter midin adam v'chay b'din shamayim. So then he's potter midin adam v'chay b'din shamayim. Milacha udelo minkar ezeka, so that's specifically by milacha. Avot sorem de minkar ezeka achinam de mechayv b'dinei adam. But I would argue that if you nick the ear of a paraduma, you'd be chayiv to pay for that, even b'dinei adam. Amrihu adin da'afilu sorem potter. No, even if you nick the ear, you would be potter by a paraduma. Kamashman, it's letting us know that afilu milacha udelo minkar ezeka chayv b'dinei shamayim. That even malacha, where you can't tell that anything has happened, still you're part of b'dinei adam, but you're still going to be chayiv at least b'dinei shamayim, because now the animal is no longer usable as a paraduma. I believe. Yeah. Okay. Where am I? Rabba says, Rabba, a fellow burns his friend's document. Shimon goes and he burns Reuven's document. Potter. Shimon is potter. The Omar Le, because Shimon says to Reuven, Niyara kaloi minoch, all I did was burn a piece of paper. Chill out. Maskif Lorami BavaKama. Rami BavaKama asks Akash, Echidami. What's the scenario that we're talking about? If there are witnesses that know how much money was written into the document, it was a document that said that Reuven can collect $1,000 from Levi, whatever. So if you have two witnesses who are saying, oh yeah, we know about that document, so that by Shimon burning that document, it means that Reuven can no longer collect with it. So then Shimon's going to have to pay him the $1,000. Or no, forget about the $1,000. Then the point is that so just write a new one. Meaning if you have witnesses who know how much it is, so just write a new document. I think that's the point. The Idaleka side, let me just make sure. Yeah, if there are witnesses that know how much is in it, so then just let them write a new one. The Idaleka side, and if there are no witnesses, so then obviously Shimon is going to be potter for burning the document. We don't know what was in that document. It's a piece of paper as far as we're concerned. We have no clue what was written. We don't have any witnesses to tell us. So Amar Ravit says, Ravit, Tehei b'maymino. Well, let's say he's talking about a scenario where Shimon believes Reuven, right? Reuven says to Shimon, hey, what'd you do that for? That document was worth $1,000. And Shimon's like, oh, I believe you. So even in that case, Shimon is potter. He doesn't have to pay. He says, oh, well, I just burnt a piece of paper anyways. Amr of Dimi bar Chanina, says of Dimi bar Chanina, Hod de Rabba, this statement of Rabba, that Asor Shtosha Chavero Potter, that if Shimon burns Reuven's document, Shimon is Potter. Machlokas Reb Shimon v'Rabboni. Let's say it's Taka Machlokas Reb Shimon and the rabbis. Where am I? Reb Shimon v'Rabboni. The Reb Shimon de Omar Dovra Agorim Limomin Kimomin Domi Mechayev. According to Reb Shimon, who says Dovra Agorim Limomin Kimomin Domi, that something that causes money is like money. A document that can be traded for money. Right, that could be right. You show the document, you get money, so it's like money. So mechayev. So according to Reb Shimon, Shimon should be chayev for burning the document. And according to the rabbis who say davar gorim l'momen, something that that causes money, that can be exchanged for money, is lav kimomen. So yeah, so that would be like Rabbah. That, like Rabbah says, so Rabbah saying like the Chacham, that's Potter. Because Davar Gorim L'Mam and Lav K'mam and Dom. Maskif lo Rav Huna Breid of Yeshua ho. Rav Huna Breid of Yeshua asks Akasha, Eimer de Shamas Leil Reb Shimon. I'll say that according to Reb Shimon, Davar Gorim L'Mam K'mam and Domi, that when Reb Shimon says that something that causes money is like money, something that initially had a proper financial value, right? A document is always simply a document. You write a document; it's a piece of paper, that you could transfer for money, but from its initial writing, it's a piece of paper. Now, okay. Where am I? Kidirabba, like Rabba, the Amar Rabba goes al chometz lifnei apaisich. That says Rabba, if a fellow steals chometz before Pesach, so chometz has a value. What's chometz? I kind of want to find a replacement for pizza. I'm bored of pizza. What's a good chometz thing that we should use? What's a good chometz thing that we should use? I don't know. I don't know. What's an example of chometz we should use? I don't know. Does anybody want to suggest like a chometz that's just a really good example? Chometz. I don't know. Chometz. Just chometz. I don't know. I guess maybe I don't get so excited about like chometz. Damar Rabba Gazel chometz lifnei Pesach. Whiskey. It'll work for now. It'll work for this example. All right. It'll work for this example. Whiskey. Whiskey's worth something. Whiskey, right? Whiskey, is expensive. It costs something. So Gazel chometz lifnei Pesach, a fellow steals whiskey before Pesach, so that's mammon. Uva'acher v'sorfa b'moed potter, and then somebody else comes and burns the whiskey on Chol HaMoed because it's chometz, and he's potter, because at Shakol mitzuvim all of levaro, because everybody has a mitzvah to burn chometz on Pesach. Le'achar Pesach, but after Pesach, right? So if Reuven stole whiskey, or let's say Shimon stole Reuven's whiskey, okay, before Pesach, and now it's after Pesach, so the whiskey is chometz she'over all of a Pesach, and it's also ba'anoah. So on the one hand, you would think, well, it's also ba'anoah. What can you do with it? If somebody burns it, they should be potter, but not necessarily. Machlokes Reb Shimon v'Rabbanan. This is punkt the machlokes between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. The Reb Shimon davar gorim limamin kumamin dami chayev. According to Reb Shimon, who says davar gorim limamin kumamin dami chayev. What does that mean? It means, well, granted that this whiskey she'over olav a Pesach, this whiskey post Pesach is also bano, it's worthless. But since I think Shimon we said was the ganif, Shimon the ganif can give it back to Reuven and say, here, take it back, and then he wouldn't have to pay the value of the whiskey. So it's a davar gorim l'mammon. It's even though it's valueless, it's a cause of money in that if you don't return it, if Shimon doesn't return it to Reuven, he's going to have to pay Reuven the value of what he stole, the value of the whiskey. But he could return it, and then he wouldn't. So it's something that can be kind of be used for financial value. So it's a davar gorim l'mammon that can cause mammon, and therefore, if somebody now burns this whiskey, they'll be chayev because they're causing Shimon to lose money. Because now he's going to have to pay Reuven. L'Rabbanon de'amri davar gorim l'mammon lav kimammon domi. And according to the Rabbanon, who say that davar gorim l'mammon lav kimammon domi, we don't treat it like money, and therefore, if somebody were to burn it, so then potter. So that's bedavar she'ein ikaro bedavar she'ein ikaro mammon mi amrinon. So by chametz, whiskey that initially has a value and then it becomes valueless, but it still can be like kind of, a cause of money, right? Such as, you can return this valueless whiskey and then you don't have to pay. So that's where we talk about davar gorim l'mammon kimammon domi. But a document which it was never worth something, it was always just a piece of paper that can be traded. It never was like something that it itself had a value. That it itself was valuable. It could always be traded for money, but it itself doesn't have a value like whiskey does. So then, would Reb Shimon say davar gorim l'mammon is kimammon domi and say that you would be chayiv? Not necessarily. Amar Ameimer man dedoin dino de garme, somebody who's mechayiv by gromis, magbi bei dmei shtore ma'alya. So then you would be able to collect, I guess if Shimon burns Reuven's document, so then Reuven would be able to collect the value of the document because he's doing dina de garmei. Uman delo doing dina de garmei magbi bei dmei niora be'alma. But if you don't judge gromas, the fact that this document can be transferred for money, if that's irrelevant, but then at least you're burning the document, at least pay the value of the document, whatever that costs, $1, whatever it is, I don't know. $1, that's a lot. The value of the piece of paper, whatever. Have a uvdo v'chapi rafram l'Rav Ashi ve'agbe bei kikshura litzalma. There was once a maise where Rafram forced Rav Ashi. I guess Rashi says when he was a young fellow, there was a scenario where I guess Rafram had to force Rav Ashi to pay for the value of a document, the finest, from the finest, kind of like a beam that you would use to etch image onto. So it sounds to me like Rafam was be'etzim saying that you would have to pay the value of the document, I think, not just the piece of paper, I think is the point. So now the Mishnah had said, Chomitz v'over olav a-pesach omer la'arishelcha lefanecha. Oh, did I? Oh, wait, what am I doing here? Okay. So chometz v'over olav a-pesach. If you have chometz, now it's post-pesach, it's also bano. Omer lo arishelcha lefanecha. So you could say arishelcha lefanecha. So okay, to use the same characters from earlier, Shimon stole chometz, whiskey, from Reuven, and now it's after Pesach. The whiskey he didn't sell it, so it's also ba'ano, and he gives it back to Reuven. He says, "Oh, by the way, here's your whiskey back." And Reuven's like, "What? You son of a gun! Stunk! This is worthless. Why are you giving it to me? It's Chometz Shavuot Lava Pesach." Well, he says, "Arishelcha lefnecha." Here it is. Take it back. Man Tana Omrin beIsuri Anoya Arishelcha lefanecha. Who is the Tana who says that by Isuri Anoya, such as this Chometz Shavuot Lava Pesach, we would say Harishelcha lefanecha? Here, take it back. Rav Chizde, Reb Yaakov, Rav Chizde says it's Reb Yaakov. The Tanya is one of the Brisa. Shor shehemis Ad shelo nigmar dino. So if you have an ox that killed, now we know what happens to an ox that killed. Ho ho, ho ho. Ooh, we know what happens to an ox that kills. I don't know what I just said, but what happens if an ox kills? Ho ho, he gets stoned. It gets stoned. It gets stoned. The painful, gruesome getting stoned. So now, but if it's prior to the verdict of the court, so during this sort of awkward phase, when we know that the ox is going to get stoned, but it hasn't been decided yet in court, so in the awkward stage, macher, if you sell the ox, it's sold. Hekdisha or mukdash, if you makdish it to the Beis HaMikdash, it's makdish to the Beis HaMikdash. Shachato, if you slaughter it, b'saru mutter, you can eat it. Hechziru shomer levailov, if somebody was guarding, he was a custodian when the ox killed, and during the awkward stage, the custodian returns it to the owner, muchzer, it's returned. Mishenigmar dino, but post verdict, when we're going to stone the ox, machro eino macher, at that point it's too late. If you sell it, it is not a good sale. Ekdisho eino mukdosh, if you makdish it, it is not makdished. Shochato b'saro osir, if you slaughter it, you're not allowed to eat the meat. Hechziro shomer levailov, if the custodian at that point returns it to its original to its owner, eino muchzer, it's not returned, and the custodian is going to be chayiv. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, says Rabbi Yaakov, af mishenigmar dino, even post verdict, hechziro shomer levailov muchzer, if the custodian returns the ox to its owner, it's returned. So we see, or at least we want to say, as we're going to see in a second, that Rabbi Yaakov is saying that by Isuri Anoyo, such as this ox which is condemned to stoning, by Isuri Anoyo, according to Rabbi Yaakov apparently, we say here, take it back. My lab, it says machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yaakov is, to Rabbi Yaakov Sover Omen Bisuri Anoyo Hareshel Cholifonecho. The Rabbi Yaakov says that by Isuri Anoyo, such as this ox that needs to be, this condemned ox, we could say here, take it back. V'Rabbanon, and the rabbis who say that the custodian at this point cannot return it, Savri Ein Omen Bisuri Anoyo Hareshel Cholifonecho. We don't say by Isuri Anoyo, here, take it back. Omar le Rabba says, lo, nisht. Nisht, nisht, nisht. Rabba says to Rav Chizda, nisht. Don't tell me that this is the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov and that the rabbis would disagree with regard to Isuri Ano Omen Hareshel Cholifonecho. That everybody agrees that by Isuri Anoya we say Hareshel Cholifonecho, here, take it back. Well then, why do the rabbis say then by this ox that's condemned, the custodian cannot return it? The imkein niflagu b'chometz b'Pesach. Sorry, read a shtickle more. Because if in fact it was a machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yaakov about, do we say by Isuri Anoya Hareshel Cholifonecho, well then the rabbis shouldn't, this machlokas should not be limited to a shor anisko, it should also be by the whiskey, by the chometz she'avar alav Pesach. We should say there too, the rabbis would say that you cannot return it. But we see that that's not the case. Ela Omar Rabba, rather Rabba says, Hocha begomrin dino shel shor shelo b'fonav ko miflege. Ho. The machlokas here between the Tanakame and Rabbi Yaakov is limited to the case of the shor aniskol, and it's a question of gomrin dino shel shor shelo b'fonav. Can somebody please explain to the people at Babylon Talmud what this means? Fine, I'll do it. But first, I gotta rub my nose. Sorry, Mom. Fine. Where are we? Oh, gewaldig. So, gewaldig. Gewaldig. Thank God it's a rainy day. There's no power washers. I'll take a rainy day over power washers any day. Probably. Especially in the winter. Rain is good in the winter. So, these gewaldige stuff. What's gewaldige stuff? Yes, this. So we have a custodian. The custodian is watching or at least is supposed to be watching the ox. Under his watch, the ox kills somebody. Additionally, under his watch, the custodian essentially, as the owner is arguing, the custodian then takes the ox to Bezdin for the ox to be sentenced to death. The question is, was that an irresponsible move on the part of the custodian that the owner can hold against him and say, you shtunk, you are the one, it's your fault that my ox is being stoned now. You can't just give it back to me. And this all comes down to the question of, do you need the ox to be present in the Bezdin in order to condemn it to death? According to the Chachamim, the answer is no. Sorry, I gotta rub my nose again. According to the Chachamim, they would say that the ox would have to be there. The ox would have to be there. Right, because he said that the owner could say to the custodian, I don't want it back. They do. Because, because we said according to Rabbi Yaakov, he says, it's probably all in the Gemara, but for some reason I'm doing it at the top of my head. But Rabbi Yaakov is the one who says that, that you could take it back. Right. And the Chacham say you can't. The reason why, so what are we talking about? The custodian is watching this ox. The ox then kills somebody. Great. The ox then goes to Bezdin, under the custodian's watch, and condemned to stoning. Now, the Chacham said that you cannot, once there's the verdict, the custodian can no longer return it to the owner. Why so? How come? Because in order to condemn the ox to be stoned, the ox would have to be in Bezdin. Therefore, the owner says to the custodian, I don't want the ox right now. It's your fault that the ox is condemned to death, because you took the ox to Bezdin. If you would have given it back to me before, I would have taken it down to the rushes down by the riverside. Nobody would have been able to find it. And it would not have been condemned to death. By you, like a shtunk, you took the ox to Bezdin. It's your fault that it's condemned to death. I don't want it back. I want money. Whereas Rabbi Yaakov will say, nah, you don't need the ox to be in Bezdin in order to condemn it to death. And therefore, there's no way out of it. Even if the custodian would not have brought the ox to Bezdin, still the Bezdin would have said that this ox is chayav misa. So therefore, even if he would have returned it to the owner in advance, and the owner would have taken it to the rushes down by the riverside where nobody could find it, that would have made no difference, because Bezdin would have condemned it to death in abstentia. So there's really no way out of it. So that's why Rabbi Yaakov says, Arishalcha lefanecha. So really, be'etzem, everyone agrees, Rabbi wants to say, that be'isuri ano omrim arishalcha lefanecha. By isuri ano you can give it back. But there's an added thing specifically in the case of this ox that killed, which is, there's a question of, does the ox have to be at the case in order to condemn it to death? Because if you say that the ox has to be there, well then you could argue that it's the custodian's fault, because if you just would have given back the ox to the owner, and the ox would have taken it to the rushes down by the riverside, then it never would have been condemned to misa, and it never would have been also by Noah in the first place. Shtickle mouthful, but alright. The machlokas here specifically by this ox and the custodian is, do you need the ox to be in the court to condemn it to death? Rabbanan Savri, Ein Gomrin Dino Shelo B'fanav. You cannot condemn the ox to death in absentia. It must be in the Bezdin. And therefore, the Amrle, so when the custodian, post-verdict, attempts to return the ox to the owner says to the custodian, say niali, if instead of bringing the ox to court, you would have brought it to me, I would have brought it to the rushes down by the riverside. Hashta masarte biyad man lo matzino lishtauye dina ba'ide. No, you didn't do that. You didn't give it to me. You took it to court like a shtunk. And therefore, I am not taking this back. I'm only taking money back. For Rabbi Yaakov Sovar, whereas Rabbi Yaakov holds Gomrin Dino Shor Shelo Bifanov, whereas Rabbi Yaakov says, look, at the end of the day, you don't need the ox to be there. You can even condemn it to death in absentia. So therefore, returning it to the owner in advance rather than taking it to Bezdin would have made no practical difference. The Omar lay that the custodian says to the owner, my Avdi lay, there's nothing you could have done. Sof hava gamre lay dino shelo b'fanav. They still would have condemned the ox to death anyways, even in absentia. So there's, here, take it back. Ashkoche Rav Chizde l'Rabba bar Shmuel ho. So now Rav Chizde, who argues with Rav Chizde, who wanted to say that Taka, it's Rav Yaakov who says, not the Chachamim. So Rav Chizda found Rab bar Shmuel Amrle Tonis Midi B'Isuri Anoya. Can you teach me epis about Isuri Anoya? Omar Lay, and Rab bar Shmuel says, sure. Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah Beheshiv Es Agzela, when the pasuk already says that you have to return the stolen thing. Matam Lomar Asher Gazal. Why does it then have to say that he stole? Just say return the stolen object. What's return the stolen object that he stole? Yachzir ki ein shegazel. You return it like it's stolen. Nikan Amu, from here they said, Gazel matbeya v'nifsel. If you steal a coin and it becomes posel, okay. Pears v'erkivu, or fruits and they became rayin, yayin. So the hechmitz wouldn't make sense over here. Honestly, neither does pears v'erkivu. We're going to ask about that in a minute. But just going based on our Mishnah's division. So over here, so you could change it like yayin v'nisnasech, whatever it is. Truma v'nitmeis, truma became tamei chometz v'over olav ha-pesach. Behema v'nevda ba'avera. Or behema and avera was done with it. Avodah zara, roveya. V'shor achalonik mardino, and a shore prior to its din. Prior to its verdict. Omar reishach lefanecha. We say here you could take it back. Manchama said the Amar ad shelo nigmar dino in mishenigmar dino lo. Now who's the opinion who says that dafka by the shore prior to the verdict you can say arishal lefanecha, but post verdict you cannot? Rabbana. It's Rabbis vikatani, and in that same Mishnah or Brisa, whatever this is, it says Chometz v'avar alav pesach. We're also talking about chometz v'avar alav pesach. So the rabbis who by a shore are saying that post verdict it cannot be returned, and yet chometz v'avar alav pesach, they're saying it can be returned. So which means that even the rabbis, right? Everybody holds b'isuri anoya omen. And the reason why post-verdict the ox cannot be returned is the question of, does the ox have to be present in the Bezdin or not? But in terms of Bisuri Anoya, everyone agrees that that's a thing. Omar Lei, so if Chizda says to Rabbi bar Shmuel, if anybody asks, don't say anything because it's going to make me look bad. I.e., he recognized that he was wrong and that Rabbi was right. Peiris v'yirkivu. So we had just said a minute ago that Peiris v'yirkivu, if you have fruits and they became rotten, we could say, here, take them back. But 1 second, it's not in our Mishnah we had said, if you look at our Mishnah, Peiris v'yirkivu mishalim k'shas hagzela. We say you have to pay like at the time of the theft. You can't just say, here, take back these rotten fruits. It depends how rotten they are. If they're entirely rotten, so then if they're partially rotten, so you can say Arishal Chulfanecha. Friends, that was Daf Tzadiches of Masechta BavaKama. Friends, tomorrow's Daf. Friends, I'm telling you, I think tomorrow's Daf, especially because I want to do like 2 Daf basically. Tomorrow's Daf, I think it's probably, my guess is going to be over an hour. We'll see what happens. Peace.